Hi everyone, this is Kat Patrick. Yes, I'm with Dreaming Spires Home Learning, but I'm also a homeschooling mom. And it's kind of tough when I want to think about topics. Like today, I want to talk about how do you know what your child is what's going to excite your child, what direction your child's going to go, what career or maybe sport or something like that, how one makes that discovery. And this is an exploratory topic. I don't have all the answers at all. I have moments in time when it sort of was clarified, at least as of June 2020 for my kids, but I'm just going to kind of talk about some of the fears that I had as a homeschooling mom, and also some of the lucky accidents that led us down certain pathways. But because I am the CEO of Dreaming Spires, and I started Dreaming Spires to serve my own children originally, the two sometimes get kind of meshed together in this discussion. So I'm not doing this just to advertise the company. It just so happens that it's all meshed together and part of my story. So when I mention that, please don't think it's just because I'm doing shameless plugs. It is, as I say, integral to the thinking. So I don't know if this kind of musing and discussion of my experience with my own 4 kids, who I've homeschooled since 2003, since my eldest was 3, is going to be some kind of series. I kind of thinking I might call it The Curious Cat with K's, because my name's Kat and I'm curious about these things. Or if this is just a one-off, I'm not quite sure. But just to make things easier, I'm going to go ahead and have a playlist on YouTube called Kurious Cat. And I'll upload these videos to the YouTube because they're easier for everybody to find, including those who may be on Facebook. But I find it really hard to find the videos on Facebook that have been recorded. Like if I do a live video, it really requires me to hunt around for it. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just useless. Or maybe because I'm admin on it, I see way too many things and it's harder for me to have the kind of experience maybe that you have. Maybe it's really obvious, like look at videos or whatever. But I mean, I've done a whole bunch of videos on there and I don't know if people are able to go back and watch them theoretically. They're supposed to. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on. My topic today is how do you know, or how do you make it possible for your child to find their thing. And I've worried about this. It's been one of my big questions since the very beginning. I remember it's the same almost realization as when I was pregnant with my first child, Lauren, and I was sort of at 7 months. And I realized that, this is now inevitable. No matter what, I can't stop it. It's going to happen. I just need to get used to the fact that I'm bringing this creature into the world and will be responsible for it forever. I mean, I get so cross with Victor Frankenstein that he birthed this creature and went, "Oh, it's ugly," and ran away. And I'm thinking, how dare you not take the responsibility for that creature you brought into the world? Anyway, I take my responsibility really seriously. So anyway, my second big sort of I guess my second one was whether to leave my teaching job or stay working full-time with children. That's a different story. This probably, I guess, was my third, is there are so many opportunities in the world. How do you know that your child isn't destined or perfect to be the world's greatest knife thrower in a circus? How do you know? How do you know that they're not destined to be an archery Olympian? How do you know that your child isn't supposed to be the person who eventually discovers a cure for diabetes. And what happens if you don't give them enough science when they're young and you don't encourage science? Maybe you're not giving them all the chances. Maybe you need to put them in science club and start a lab group when they're 6. And it was a real big problem for me. Maybe it's not a problem for you, but I have been accused of being a Luke Skywalker type person who is always looking away to the future and never where I am and what I am doing. So I worry about these trajectories and these pathways, which serves me well in trying to identify possible fires before they happen, kind of thing. It serves me really well in Dreaming Spires to have a vision for it and to stick to the vision when people are often offering different ideas of ways I could branch out and do other things. It's like, I have a lane. This is my lane. I'm going to stick with my lane. So what do you do with the kids? Well, let me just work backwards on this. When did I have moments that it became clear what was going to happen? And obviously, my eldest, who is a writer, she's coming up to 20. She was writing before she could write. She would make me sit, she would make little booklets and she'd make me sit down and she would dictate to me her story. And I very much related to that because I used to write novels and short stories throughout my life. I guess I sort of gave up on that dream maybe, I guess the last time I was writing books was maybe about 8 years ago. And I started instead writing more nonfiction and doing things like course development and stuff like that. Who knows, I may go back to it one day. But anyway, that's a long time to be a writer or think of oneself as a writer. And so that was easy for me to encourage that. And I wanted to encourage it. And so I supported her all throughout. And sometimes she would just take it her own initiative to write stories. And she learned how to format for Kindle. And she published 9 little chapter book novels with illustrations. And also I think about another 3 or 4, some short stories and things like that. She ran a website. She would create computer games to go along with it. I mean, she was really, into this. And it's only recently now that she wants to be taken very seriously in the writing world that she has suppressed those novels. I'm really sad about it. Maybe one day when she's really famous, we can resurrect them and bring them out again because they were brilliant chapter books. But anyway, she was a writer, writing as a hobby. And then I guess it was about the age of 13 or so. And we were reading a book called, I should get the name of this story right. Is it Chris Hadfield's book called something like, I would look it up in my phone, but I'm using my phone to film this. Astronaut's View of Life on Earth or something like that. Fantastic book. Brilliant book. And he starts off saying that he remembers seeing the initial man's landing on the moon and decided at that moment that he wanted to be an astronaut. The problem was that he lived in Canada and there was no Canadian space program and the American space program didn't take foreigners. But nevertheless, he decided he was going to be an astronaut and he decided to live his life like he was going to be an astronaut. And all of his choices, pretty much from the age of about 9 or 10, was, I am an astronaut. How do I get to be an astronaut? And we were reading about that. And I guess we were talking about, isn't it amazing how he decided at the age of 9 what his future was going to be? And my daughter just practically threw herself on the ground and boo-hooed. Ugly crying, as we call it. And it was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And she said, I like astronomy. I think I want to study astronomy, but all I want to be is a writer. And so I said, well, then be a writer. And if people ask you what you're going to be when you grow up, you say, well, I am already a writer. And pretty much she's lived that way ever since. So for 8 years, she's just been, I am a writer. What do I do to be a writer? Fortunately, with the American university system, she can also study astronomy. So she's doing English and astronomy. But the astronomy is definitely for enjoyment and fun while she works on her career as a writer. And then, so that was we had a eureka moment with her, a very clear eureka moment, I think, where it was like, okay, that's what you want to be it. How do we get to do that? And I think there are a lot of students who will make that kind of decision, probably more 14 or 15. But since it's important, I believe, to have a plan B, because I was going to do medicine. I was going to be a doctor until at the age of 21. Fortunately, I was in the American system that allows, it requires a liberal arts program. And so you study all different kinds of subjects like English and astronomy. And you don't actually have to make too cut and dried a decision. If I'd been in the British system, I would have left all my humanities at 16 and studied chemistry, biology, physics, and maths, and probably further math for A-level, and gone into medicine and as an undergraduate and not been able to change. And I think, to me, that is a fear that I've sort of projected onto my kids, and it's why we decided not to go through the UK route, even when we were still living in Britain. And I mean, we still have the opportunity to go back there because we're dual citizens, and my husband still works there, so it's still an option for us. But right now, Plan A is the liberal arts one, where you can make decisions later. And so along those lines, my second child, I had crises with him a couple of times, because at one point, I mean, we're a swimming family, and it was, we're a swimming family for a number of reasons. One is my eldest daughter was a good swimmer and started on a team, and then it just worked, it made sense to just stick the others on, because it helped narrow down our lifestyle and our schedule. We did dabble with golf for Marcus for a while. He said he wanted to golf. But, I mean, it did mean that basically we had to get an au pair to look after the younger kids while we were shooting off to swimming and golf at the same time, but different directions. And it just was clear to me that Marcus really didn't have the drive to do all the extra, and I didn't have the time to do all the extra practice he needed to do to start getting a good foundation on it. So we sort of knocked that on the head. But I thought, oh my goodness, maybe I just stopped the world's greatest golfer. But I sort of feel like if you've really got that kind of drive, world's greatest golfer drive, you can't be stopped, I think. Like Lauren in writing. Nothing's going to stop you. You're going to do it. You're going to set up a putting green out in your yard, and you're going to practice all the time. I think you will have that kind of drive. But anyway, we got to Marcus's the age of 14 and 15 as a 9th grader, or year 10. It also coincided with his taking a course of Accutane. He had horrible acne, and Accutane does suck out some drive, and there is some mild depression that can come with it, and I think maybe he had that. It's also at the time when boys are shooting up with their puberty and can just have a general malaise anyway. My youngest son, who's just a little over 13, who's very aware of himself, he's saying, I have a very weird feeling right now. My body just feels weird. It's almost like it's like I'm dizzy all the time, but I'm not really dizzy. And I think he is starting to grow and shoot up, and he is recognizing how his body is odd. And it's basically at that point in his older brother that a lot of things went south. There was very little desire to really do anything other than what was scheduled. And he would go through the motions, but there wasn't a great deal of desire about anything. And I was like, what is he going to be when he grows up? He likes working on the soundboard at church. He's always liked pushing buttons. I naturally thought that he'd go into computing or something like that, as much time as he spends on the internet. And the computer, he does computer programming. He would take figures from video games and port them, and then he would sort of put little joints on them so that they could move. It was really cool what he was doing and teaching himself. But he said, I don't really want to do that as a job. I like it as a hobby, but that's not what I want to do the rest of my life. Anyway, we just didn't really have a direction for him. But one of the things that I was insisting on was that he took foreign language, a couple of years of Spanish. Spanish is the most obvious language in Texas anyway, and I kind of remember it from university myself, where we had to take foreign language also. So he had to take Spanish, but he didn't like it, and that first year he basically blew it entirely. And he says, what I really want to take is Japanese. And so I did try to find a Japanese tutor and someone who would come and work for Dreaming Spires and teach Japanese. That's really what I wanted. But I had a couple of conversations with people that I just couldn't get through to them what I was trying to ask them to do and join in. And I just didn't find the right person, basically. So I made a deal with Marcus. I said, look, you take the second year of Spanish, so that you and you get an A in it to show that you can study foreign language. And next year I'll let you start taking courses at our local community college in Japanese. We have this arrangement with our community college where kids who are still in high school can take college courses, and they count both towards your high school credits and your college credits for the future university. It's a really swish thing. The courses in general aren't that great. Lauren took a whole bunch of them and has decided not to transfer them into her new university because she loves the level of study and the inquiry that goes on with the university that she's at, that she doesn't want to bring in some kind of second-rate credits in order to graduate early, because she wants to hopefully spend all her time studying English and astronomy to her heart's desire. And if she brought in those second-rate credits, it would cut a year off. Now, it would save a lot of money, but my husband would rather her do the gamut of study that she can do that's on offer to her. So he's made that choice, and okay, he can make that decision. Anyway, with Marcus, basically he did work hard enough that year to be able to go into the dual enrollment Japanese, and he was casting around for something to do, a second course to do that would fit in the schedule. So he could drive to the campus and either take a class before or after Japanese that was of interest to him. So he looked at all kinds of things. He looked at a lot of computing things. We looked at environmental science. We looked at some communication studies, and basically the only thing that fit in with the schedule was a class called MIDI music, which is kind of electronic music. And so he took that, and the light went off, and he said, I love music composition. He started mowing lawns to buy a keyboard. He started doing extra jobs for money. He took on a job as a lifeguard in order to earn money, in order to buy stuff for his synthesizer. And lately he's fallen in love with LPs, vinyl. And he bought himself a turntable. He bought himself some new speakers. He's buying vinyl from all over the world to learn all this very eclectic style of music that he likes. He really loves Japanese jazz. I think he might want to do sort of video game soundtracks or something like that. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, since that first class at MIDI music, he's taken synthesizer music next. He's taking a music theory course this summer. He's going to take another music class next year. It might be, songwriting. He's also going to take an intro to film course, because later on down the line there's film scores, and he wants to take that. In order to take that, he has to take intro to film. So, and he's taking that at night as a night class. So you see, when you hit on something, you know it. They start doing it like crazy. I have 2 more kids. I haven't quite got a handle on them yet. And remember, there could be always plan B. Like Lauren went to university in August to do English and entrepreneurship. And as part of her course in her first term, she had to take a variety of courses because it's a liberal arts college. She had a freshman intro that she had to take. She took a Spanish class. She took... I think it was intro to psychology or sociology, something like that, and an astronomy class. She loved the astronomy to the point that her professor recognized that she just wasn't going through the motions of the class. She knew stuff. She knew background. She knew how things fit together. She had an astronomer's mind. And they actually contacted her and said, we really want you to study astronomy also. Whether a minor or a major, we don't really care. We want you in the department. And she said, I love astronomy, so I'm going to do that. So that's a plan B already. But with my younger kids, I just recognized this last year, my 15-year-old daughter, who doesn't really like to read very much. She's a swimmer. She's going to be a swimmer. She loves swimming. She thinks, breathes, eats swimming. She studies statistics all the time. But she wants to swim at university, so she has to have some academics in there. And this last year, I was surprised that she wanted to take 2 different science courses at the same time, conceptual physics and biology. I did know she liked the biology ahead of time because the books that we do for Dreaming Inspires Biology, we read a couple of them in our homeschool a couple of years ago. And the Hot Zone was one that just fired her up. I mean, if you are in Dreaming Inspires already, and you know when your kids go onto the Dreaming Inspires course site, the Blackboard site, there is a banner at the top with some pictures. The main one is the silhouette of the boy in the orange light. But if you sit on there for a little bit, the screen changes, and my daughter's there reading the Hot Zone. She's read that book now 7 times, cover to cover. This is a girl who does not like to read that much. She would read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and that was about it. It was really hard to get her to read anything else. But she has been very inspired by nonfiction. She used to always like the sort of disaster books, like the Night to Remember about the Titanic. She liked listen to that on audiobook and things like that. Maybe she takes after me. I mean, my specialty is medieval imprisonment and torture and writing, people who wrote in prison and poisons and things like that. So I've always found those really fascinating. Maybe a bit of that's rubbed off. I don't know. But anyway, she looks to be going down some kind of science route. And so we're trying to encourage that more in the sciences. And my youngest son took in our co-op marine biology with Miss Kim, who's our science teacher for Dreaming Inspires, and just became absolutely delighted with it. He says he wants to do marine biology, although I haven't really seen him sort of pursuing much of that since, but he does really enjoy science. He watches so many YouTube videos in our nightly telly time when he watches... I can't remember the names of them. I should probably put them as comments or something. One of those called Something Every Day. And then the slow-mo guys is another one he likes. He watches, right now he's watching this English chap who does a lot of things you didn't know, I think it is, or something like that. And smarter every day. Is he smarter every day? I think he's smarter every day. And for Christmas and his birthday, we took a KiwiCo box that he gets, this engineering box, and he puts things together. So he really enjoys that. But anyway, watch this space. I don't know what he's going to do. But so ultimately, what am I saying? Now that if you've listened this long, gosh, thank you. I hardly ever listen to anyone's videos that are 30 minutes long, or however long this is. I think you can't put them in everything. For example, sports. They can't do soccer stroke football and cricket and swimming and what other things do they do in England? Athletics and I don't know, netball or whatever. And just think about it. There are only so many sports that you tend to do in England. You know, there's also American football and basketball and baseball and things like that most British kids won't even have the chance. You know, oh, but they may have been the most amazing American baseball player. We'll never know because they never had the chance. Well, you can only do what you can do. And you can only do what is in your area, what you have time for, what your family can do. They will find something that is their passion. Eventually. And I think, and maybe it'll only be a passion for a while as well. And that's not too bad. If you look at the way our lifestyles are these days, maybe look at the kind of jobs that you had when you were growing up as a teenager and as a young adult, and then what you do now. I think it's so much more important to learn how to learn. I think it's so much more important, say in sports or hobbies or something like that, that they do something, they do it for a while, a long enough time that they can gain mastery over it. And that trajectory is what will serve them well when they eventually find their thing. How you start, how you struggle, how you succeed, how you change. I mean, swimming has been so good for my kids because of the way, particularly when they go through puberty and their strokes just fall apart and they think, I want to quit. I'm not good at this anymore. And you're like, you need to stick with this. If we change sport, you just get to the same plateau and quit again. So let's push through this and learn that sometimes you plateau and you have to push. And you just push through it. And our coaches used to say, she used to say, oh, I used to be really good in breaststroke and now I'm no good in breaststroke anymore. And they say, well, but you're improving in your backstroke. So maybe you're not a breaststroker anymore. Maybe you're a backstroker now. It turned out that Lauren's quite good at all four strokes put together in the most grueling race, the 400 IM. And by being pretty good in all the strokes, she is a very valuable member of her team. But she had to really push through a difficult period when she was 14, 15, 16. And she pretty much plateaued so that she set a bunch of best times in 2016. When it came to her last year of swimming, which was just last year. Oh my gosh, it was last year, 2019. Her last, it was, I think, 8 races that she swam. In her last 8 races of her school career, she set new records for herself in 6 of them. And so, you know, never say never. Some of them, it just took that realization that this was the last time that she had, for example, to get under 30 seconds in her 50-meter freestyle. And she just thought, what the heck? I'm just going to go for it. And she got out of her head to talk herself out of doing well and just found that heart and said, I'm going to do this. And oh my gosh, it made me cry. It was like 29.97, but you don't care, right? It's under 30 seconds. And she made it. And not only that, at that particular race, that particular gala, that particular competition, she won or came in second or third in all her races. And she was actually top scoring girl in the whole competition. I mean, talk about going out on a high. Never would she have thought when she was struggling at 13, 14, 15, that would ever even happen. So it was really, really brilliant. I was just so proud of her. So things like sport or any other hobby where you get to where you have to practice and persevere over time. You may not actually be the great artist that you hope to be, but that perseverance, that teaching yourself, that desire to learn, that will stick with you through your life. Just like you might think you love medicine, want to be a doctor at 18, and when you get to 21, you're like, not really. But all the studies that you did up until then, they're not wasted. It's all like building up. I don't know if we can have a good analogy for this. Maybe like, I know, I have a good analogy actually. Have you ever made spaghetti and meat sauce or spaghetti bolognese, whatever you call it, and you made a big batch of it? And you ate sort of bolognese for a couple of days and you're like, I'm sick of this now, but I have this huge batch. I mean, you could freeze it and come back to it later. Or you could start adding spices to turn it into chili con carne. And it's a better chili con carne, or chili if you're America, because it kind of stewed those bolognese flavors for a few days. And so then you added those, the cumin and the chili powder and the spices and all of that to make it a really rich and layered chili con carne. So your school time, you might be studying bolognese, but by the time you mature and decide what you really want to do, you've actually got a carne. But the chili con carne is a better chili con carne for all the bases of bolognese. That might be the weirdest analogy I've ever made. Anyway, I would love to hear from you guys, either in the comments on the YouTube or on the Facebook group for Dreaming Spires, because that's really where I'm going to start this conversation. I would love to hear case studies of where, when, how one of your children found their passion, and realizing it's probably still plan A and there's still a possibility of plan B. But I think it would really encourage people to talk about what is firing up your child, and how you know, and what you have been supporting that child to do that. I mean, for example, my brother's son is very interested in Rubik's Cube, and so, you know, he's traveled around with him to different competitions, and now there's talk, I mean, with COVID, who knows now, probably this has been knocked on the head, but the son who is now in his last year in school, his plan was to get together a regional tournament in the area, you know, plan it and get with some other people to create a regional tournament. And that's showing a lot of initiative. And okay, he may never do anything professionally with Rubik's Cube or anything like that, but he will have done event planning through it. And so maybe ultimately, if he doesn't go into event planning, whatever business he goes into, there might be some event planning as part of his job or as part of his business place. And, you know, no bolognese is ever lost as the basis of a chili, basically, is the answer. Okay, so thanks for listening to all of this. And I hope that's been helpful. It's kind of helped me also talk through some things about my kids and just revisit some of the highlights of our homeschooling. And, you know, this will never be the end of the story anyway. So I'll see you guys for another Curious Cat another time. See ya.